It's then 16 minutes later at 9:02, United Flight 175 hits the South Tower, cutting between the 78th and 84th floors. And then 57 minutes later at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapses and Wells is there. He's in there. Now, from all the information you know and what you know about your son, can you walk us through what he's doing between 9:02 and 9:59 for those 57 minutes? September 11th, 2001. Located on the 104th floor of the South Tower in the World Trade Center, Wells Crowther was busy at work in his office. His mother, Alison Crowther, who operates the Red Bandana Project, joins the podcast to share his story of American heroism. So, let's do it.
Too many days in the darkness, without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat, head pulled down over your eyes. Every part of you wants to surrender, but darling, you were meant to survive. With every star.
So it's 8:46 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11 flies into the North Tower. Where is your son Wells at this point?
Wells is at his office on the 104th floor of the South Tower. He was a equities trader for Sandler O'Neill and Partners, and that's where their offices were located.
It's then 16 minutes later at 9:02, United Flight 175 hits the South Tower, cutting between the 78th and 84th floors. And then 57 minutes later at 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapses and Wells is there. He's in there. Now, from all the information you know and what you know about your son, can you walk us through what he's doing between 9:02 and 9:59 for those 57 minutes?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And also, you should know that it took us a very long time, months and months and months, to piece all of this together, what he did. We knew nothing in the beginning, which was a terrible place to be. We just knew he wasn't coming home. So what happened was when the North Tower, which was the first one to be hit, when the North Tower was hit, Wells was in his office, and he was there with another young man who was Wells was a fully trained volunteer firefighter. So that's a big part of this story. And he was there with another young man who was also a volunteer firefighter. So they decided to leave their offices and go down and try to help out at the scene at the North Tower. Nobody knew there was another attack coming. So, and nobody even knew it was an attack at that point. It seemed like just an accident. So Wells was going down to help out with that. That saved his life at that point, because he was in the World Trade Center. Because they were so high, there were express elevators from the ground that would go up and down from what they called the Sky Lobby, which was on the 78th floor of the South Tower. So Wells went down to he was in the stairwell because he knew not to take, in an emergency situation, he didn't want to wait around for an elevator to show up, and not all the elevators were working either. So he came running down the stairs to the 78th floor, and I personally think he must have been right at the door when the plane hit, because he, according to the eyewitnesses, he showed no sign of injury or burn. So, which he surely would have, had he been inside the Sky Lobby at that time. Anyway, so he got down. He was on the Sky Lobby at about the time the plane hit the South Tower, and that's where he was able to use his training and his skills to save lives. So he went around, put out small fires. He knew where the exit was, the only open exit. He found that. off the sky lobby, and he was able to direct people who could walk. He said, for those of you who can walk, get up and come with me now, stand now. If there's anyone you can help them, but come up and move with me now. So he directed people to the only exit that was available off the sky lobby, carried a woman over his shoulders down to the 68th floor, approximately, or 62nd floor, approximately. And then he was also with, at that first trip with Ling Young, who was burned over 40% of her body. She's one of the people that was recognized and I reached out to as someone who survived. She was burned over 40% of her body. But Wells said, can you carry a fire extinguisher? And she said, yes. He said, well, please carry one because we may need it going down. So they made their way down to about the 61st floor. So, and Wells put the woman down that he was carrying and said, I have to go back up and help others. And Ling said, do I need to carry the fire extinguisher? And lights were on. Everything seemed pretty normal at that point. So Wells said, no, it's okay. Just keep going. So he went back up and found Judy Ween and the group of people she was with, directed them to the exit. And that's how Judy and Ling were able to piece together the order of who came down first, because Judy said, I saw this fire extinguisher sitting in the stairwell in this sort of a strange place and thought that was odd. So they knew Judy came down second after Ling. So that's all they knew of Wells, but we later found out that Wells was recovered with the FDI incident commander, Donald Burns, and his men. And they were actually as a group, because when the tower came down, it pancaked and created like a huge bellows effect. So Wells had made it to the lobby. He was with the other firefighters, the members of the FDNY, and they were blown together as a group out and up against the wall of 4 World Trade. And that's where they were recovered. So that's basically what we had to piece together with what he was doing in his final hour. But the women he saved and the people he saved, and it's been documented he saved at least 12 lives, recognized him because he was wearing a red bandana to cover his face and protect himself from the smoke. And we knew that Wells always carried a red bandana ever since he was a little boy. So that was the clue that I read in the New York Times at the end of May, Fighting to Live as the Towers Died, that huge article. That was the clue that caught my eye and why I started to reach out to these women. And I sent them photographs and they ultimately identified Wells.
And you found that that New York Times article was about like 8 months later, right?
Yes, it was for Memorial Weekend of 2002.
So at 8:46 a.m. then, when the first plane hits the North Tower, that's when Wells and his buddy, you said, the other volunteer firefighters said, oh, we should go help. And that's why he was about almost 30 floors, about 20 something floors below his office, because he was actually already on his way down and out to go help.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. So he was actually, that intention actually saved his life at first, to save others' lives, right. which is crazy to think about. But then I guess then too, at 8:59, the Port Authority evacuates or puts out an order to evacuate both towers, which is 2 or 3 minutes before the second plane hits the South Tower. So that's why you have, I think it was over 200 people waiting in that sky lobby at the time to take the elevators. And the reason they were there was because they were ordered to evacuate. So they're all waiting at the elevator. The plane hits between the 78th floors, and then your son emerges from the stairwell, which is probably what did save him, was because of that timing. The second time was because he was in the stairwell, not out in the sky lobby where the plane hit.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you didn't end up finding out until about, when was it that you ended up actually finding out about Wells and having some confirmations? Because I got to think that time between 9/11 and when you actually did it. I think it's 6 months later, March of 2002, before you really found out, or were confirmed. Yeah, from the recovery. What was that time frame like? Were you like in New York working with first responders, having to file like a missing persons report and just wait it out? What was that time like?
Well, yes, that was all done early on, very early on. And not only filing a report, my husband went into the city to do that, but we gave DNA samples. We provided the official people with samples of, Wells's hairbrush, samples of DNA, dental records. It was horrible. It was horrible, and the worst thing I've ever gone through in my life, losing Wells and all that had that went along with it. There were support groups. I tried to participate, but that wasn't right for me. That was not my way. I journaled. I actually had premonitions about 9/11 before it happened, and a lot of spiritual epiphanies, aha moments, whatever afterwards. And so I kind of focused on that. And my girls, we had 2 daughters, and I was concerned that they were going to be derailed. So I focused on that, and my husband. We had a lot of support from family and friends, but it was a very cold, dark time.
Yes, it's I mean, I can only imagine from that day going forward, especially he's missing, and you have your presumptions for those 6 months, obviously, until it happens. And you guys also witnessed 9/11 yourself on TV too. It wasn't just something that happened and you just got that phone call. I mean, you basically were kind of there and present during that day as well.
Yes, yeah, we all were. I was in shock, I think. I was at my office. I was vice president of sales for a company over in a town over in Westchester. So I was across the river from where we lived. And it was actually, I found out because I was sitting with my boss, we were planning a business meeting, and the phone rang. Her husband was a stockbroker, although his offices were not, he was in Midtown, he wasn't downtown. And the phone rang, and my boss said, "It's for you, it's Jeff's secretary." Well, my husband was supposed to be at a golf outing that day. So I thought maybe something happened with Jeff. So I go to pick up the phone in my office, and my husband's secretary said, "Wells just called. He wants you to know he's okay." I said, "Well, Wells, why wouldn't he be?" And she said, "Don't you know what happened?" I said, "No." "What happened?" She said, "Well, a plane's hit the World Trade Center, but Wells just called to say he's okay." So I said, oh, all right. So I thought he was okay. And then we get a report that the second tower is hit. And that's when I call. And then there's the report that a tower collapsed. And the moment I heard that, because we didn't have a television or anything at our shop, it was just an old radio they were able to find. So I was able to, I found out that I walked out to hear what was going on, and people were just staring at me, like just staring at me. And I said, "Well, what's happening?" They said the second tower has collapsed. And when I heard that, I just knew Wells was gone. So I called my husband crying. Wells is gone. And my husband said, "Don't say that. He had skills. He could have gotten himself out," which he could have. My husband was right, but he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't leave people behind. He was there as now not an equities trader. He was there as a firefighter, and he was going to save as many lives as he could, which he did. So,
yeah, because he had a couple of chances to leave, but just chose to keep going back up the stairs.
Yes, to go back up the stairs, or even once he got out from the sky lobby, but also once he got down, all the way down, because they were at the lobby level, they were at the ground level. And the reports then were that it seemed like everything was normal. Air conditioning was on, lights were on. And he actually, we found out later that Lieutenant Burns and his men and Wells were going to go back up with a Jaws of Life tool, a hearse tool, to cut people out of elevators and to do whatever, keep working to save lives. But that's when the South Tower collapsed. So
Yeah, because the elevators were still, some of them were still working. That's what
yeah.
He goes down, I think it was like the 68th floor, and he sees the firefighters. The firefighters get the victims he brought down, and they then take the elevators down, the separate elevators, right down to the ground floor. And
yeah, wherever. I think they had to go down to even further from where he left them. He said, keep going, keep going. I think it was maybe about I don't know. I don't know. I think it was maybe around the 40th floor or so.
yeah,
There were elevators that were working.
yeah, and
So
they kept taking them down, which is really crazy to think that the elevators were still operable up until almost the actual collapse.
yes, yeah.
And so then where is this where was the Red Bandana Project born? Because then you read a New York Times article 8 months later after 9/11, which is only a couple months after you actually they're able to find Wells. You're reading this New York Times article. There was someone who says there's mentions a red bandana, and you know that your son always had a red bandana on him, and you're reading this article. It says, yeah, this guy with this red bandana did X, Y, and Z, helped so-and-so and so-and-so. Was that really where the project and the foundation was born?
Well, kind of. I mean, Wells's signature was a red bandana, so that was kind of a natural thing to link to him.
Link the two, yeah.
Yeah. Because he carried it ever since he was a little boy. My husband gave it to him when we were going off to church one day. He probably was 7 or 8 years old, and then he carried red bandanas ever since. Where it was born, what happened was we started getting money from people just sending us money. And so very quickly we realized we had to start a charitable trust. So actually the charitable trust was, my husband's brother was an attorney. And so he set up an escrow account or whatever. So we could put this money coming in. I mean, we got something like $13,000 collected from a bunch of firehouses in Maine, I believe that came from. And so, we wanted to use that money to do good. So we established the Wells Crowther Charitable Trust, and it was finally given 501(c) status in 2002, in early 2002. So that was the first thing we did, because we also decided that what we wanted to do was establish a scholarship at Nyack High School, because Wells had talked about that. He said, when I make a lot of money on Wall Street, I want to start something, and I want to call it the Birchwood Foundation, because that's the name of our street where he grew up and he loved it. And so that was Wells's dreams. So we started the Wells Crowther Charitable Trust, and the first thing we did was establish a scholarship at Nyack High School called the Birchwood Award. The Rockland Symphony Orchestra, of which I was a member, gave a concert in November of 2001 and dedicated a movement from a Beethoven piano concerto to Wells. And so the second thing that we did was establish a scholarship at the Rockland Conservatory of Music and help. First thing we did was commit to sponsoring young people's concerts that the Rockland Symphony gave. So that's how the work of the Charitable Trust began to build. More money kept coming in. Wells's friends from growing up here in Nyack and from Boston College were doing fundraisers. It was just a beautiful thing. So it wasn't until actually, and the purpose of the trust, the mission of the trust, is to assist young people to become exemplary adults through education, health, recreation, and character development.
which is basically
And
based off of Wells's life and path in his own life and how he lived, right?
yes, we liked it. Yes, that's right. And we thought these themes would be very important to think about for students to explore. And so that's how the Red Bandana Project came to be.
Yeah, that's great. It's all, and you mentioned student athlete because Wells was a student athlete even through college, right? He was a lacrosse player
Yes.
at Boston College, and he, I'd love to get your thought too, because this is like only an insight I think only you would be able to share about Wells is when he was on Wall Street and he's a volunteer firefighter at that point, right?
Yes.
There's got to be an itch to not be wearing a suit anymore and to become a full-time firefighter. I can only imagine because staring at a computer all day, going on Wall Street, that commute alone, going in and out of the city, which I've done, can be very robotic and just soul crushing when you do it week after week after week after week, when you're really, it's, and sounds, and I mean, he's proved it that he's more of a service oriented person to others. What conversations did you have with Wells? Because I've got to imagine he had some with you guys about leaving Wall Street and pursuing something else.
Well, absolutely he did. He not so much with me, but with his father. He was talking about yes, there was that itch, and that's a great term to use. He was really a man of action, and just sitting at a computer day in and day out, focused on that. It just, he knew it was a privilege to be able to work for this wonderful company, but he said, I need more. And so he talked to his father and he said, I'm going to think about leaving Wall Street and joining the FDNY. And my husband said, well, Wells, you're a young guy. He was 24 at the time. Why don't you just keep working, make a lot of money on Wall Street, get your nest egg settled. And then, when you're 30 or so, why don't you think about joining the fire department? And Wells said, well, Dad, money isn't everything. I just feel like I need to be doing something more. And so that was it. And after 9/11 happened and we were clearing out his apartment, my husband found an application for the FDNY partly filled out. So he was working on that. What he said to me was, Mom, I feel like I need to be doing something else. And of course I was thinking, well, Wells, whatever you want to do, you want to go back to graduate school and get another degree, or, we're happy to support you. I had no clue that he was thinking about joining the FDNY.
Well, that's usually the age where it happens. Mid-20s, you start to kind of have different feels on really what career you want to do because you first get that life experience. And it probably, it would have only been in probably another couple months and he would have been a firefighter anyway. So he would have, regardless of what would have happened, he would have played some significant role on 9/11 just like he did, because he would have just been in the suit like he was, or actually in official FDNY capacity.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he was a very special young man. And I think I say this about Boston College. They finished off all three because our two daughters also went. They followed Wells to BC. I think that Boston College finished off Wells spiritually in a very beautiful way, and completed the formation of our three children. Excuse me, as beautifully and as perfectly as we would have hoped, with all that we worked to do for them as they were children and growing up, and examples we were trying to set. And Wells in the end he became very spiritual. So I think God was talking to him a lot. And I think he had an epiphany actually in Spain, when he was in Spain with friends, He said he was in a cathedral in Barcelona, and he said, famous cathedral, and he said, suddenly I just had this overwhelming sense and understanding that my life was made for others. My life was made for others, to help others.
It's usually those thoughts, those deeper reflections typically happen on vacations or when you're away from your ordinary life, because you're out of the craziness. You're finally got a little short-term clean slate, and your creative mind starts to flourish when you're relaxed, you're calm, you're not around those different distractions that typically take up our lives at work and at home. And that's really when you do get a real true sense of clarity. So I'm not surprised that might be one of the times where maybe he actually chose to take the actionable step and turn that thought and dream of being a firefighter into actuality, which is then filling out the application. Because like the end of, if you go away for like a week, 2 weeks, those first couple of days, it's more of like a complete digress. You're finally away from work. It's like a little bit of excitement, enjoyment. But then later on, towards the end of the vacation, but not the last day, usually is that little perfect little pocket where you have these reflections of your inner self, and you really reach a true level of clarity that I found that might be exactly where he finally found that time to pursue it, which he ended up just doing anyway, unofficially, and completely
Yeah.
unofficially. He did anyway. So
Yeah.
it's not surprising. And as 9/11, as the anniversaries keep happening, I mean, we're over 20 years already. I mean, I remember when I was in second grade when that first happened, and more and more people are growing up now without ever being alive during 9/11.
Yes. Yeah.
What would you want them to know most about that day, and what would you want schools and places to teach most about that day to people who just have never been alive to experience any of that?
That's a huge question. I would want taught, first of all, though, I would not want it sugarcoated. I would want students, young people, to know this happened. It was real. It was devastating. And it was a big eye opener to the evil that can lie within human beings. And you can't be naive to that. It exists in this world. It exists in this world. And as sad as it is, there are people that are willing to go to, and many people that are willing to go to all kinds of ends to hurt others. And these people that they hurt weren't even direct. I mean, they were just normal people, innocent people. But these terrorists didn't care. And they had their big mission that they were on. And there are people that can become very warped through mental control of others, or through their own dialogue or conversation that they teach themselves about what they could do to gain their ends. And it can be very evil. There's no sugarcoating that. It is a reality. And people try to gloss over it sometimes, maybe, I don't know, but the evil is there. The other thing I would want the kids to know, that mostly that day, the good in human nature shone brightly. The way other people courageously helped other victims, the way the people from around the world came flooding to New York to help, to lend assistance, how brave, first responders who were left climbed in that pile and faced their own possible injury or death, climbing around the still burning metal, It was there was so much good that happened that day. And so that's how I focus on it, is that the good ultimately will overpower evil, but we have to be prepared to know that it can and take action.
Yeah, people don't realize I love the point you said about the responders like pulling out their own, because that really is something I feel like doesn't get a lot of immediate attention when we think about 9/11, is those experiences that those who lived and then went in still have to deal
Yes.
with. And from that first person point of view, going in after and actually pulling out, I mean, bodies after bodies after bodies after parts after, I mean, everything reminds me of the Pulse nightclub shooting, where the police went in afterwards, and there's I believe 50 plus people were killed, and all the officers could hear in the club, because there's no music obviously during the investigation, was just phones ringing. It was phone after phone after phone after phone ringing, because the family members are looking for their loved ones and calling. And they're not going to stop calling until, and they can't, then the investigators aren't going to go turn off every single person's phone. So then they're there sifting through bodies and the scene and the bullets, and it's just phones ringing over and over again. And we really, I don't think give a lot of too much credit to really putting ourselves in those people's shoes, walking up there, and those who were the entire part of pulling people out of the tons of rubble, that two buildings that are over 100 stories worth completely collapsing, not let alone everything around it as well.
It was an unreal scene. I mean, we were down there 2 weeks after, or a week after, maybe week 2, and it was just still smoking. The fires weren't out. It was still smoking, and it looked like Armageddon. It looked like a set from a science fiction horror movie. It was just impossible to comprehend. I mean, you just look at it, and it's mountains high, taller than other buildings around, of the rubble that was there. 2 points that I'd like to make. Number one, the first responders that did come in afterwards to help with the rescue and recovery effort for months, went on for months. Many of them have died from health related to doing that, and many of them are suffering from health related issues due to that. The other point I would like to stress, which probably goes back to the evil versus good situation, is that I would want students studying this to know and to embrace the idea that we can't just say, oh, let Joe do it. We have to, each one of us, take responsibility for doing good things, for making things happen in this world, because we're all capable of that. It's just a matter of the willingness and the mindset to know, yes, we can make a difference. It doesn't have to be at that level, but, and I say this when I speak to students all over the country, we're a creature on this planet with an advanced brain and opposable digits. We're the most powerful creature on this planet. And it's up to us to make this beautiful planet as healthy and happy and beautiful a place as it can be for as many people as it can be, in a good, positive way. And whether it's in a small role or a big role, we all have the opportunity to make good happen.
Well, that's the thing. We always have this, because of the people who came before us have done so well for others, that a lot of times I feel like there's like this thought of there's this assumption that it's still going to get done because somebody will do it, but there is a somebody that is doing it. It's not just like this invisible person who just comes and does well and things are okay. Like there's like this thought of like this bureaucratic motion doing these things and going off to war or going into a burning building, when it is literally human beings that are doing that. And we're fine as long as there's more human beings doing that than not doing that. But we all have the capability and actually need to, as a necessity, to eventually in our life be one of those people that is actually doing it, just like Wells was.
Right. And it can be, something as simple as holding a door open for someone, or, picking up some trash you see lying on the ground rather than walking by it saying, oh, somebody else will take care of that. Just simple little things can make a difference. I'll never forget, I was driving through kind of a campus situation. I saw a lady carrying a whole lot of books and then they fell. So I stopped the car, I got out and I helped her pick it up. And she looked at me incredulously and said, thank you so much. You really made my day. I said, well, I'm happy I could help you. Of course, it wasn't hard to do. And yet look how it changed her experience of the day into something beautiful rather than something horrible. And how does that mindset then continue for her and others throughout the day? For others she encounters.
Yeah, everything is reciprocal and contagious.
Well, it's like dropping a pedal into a pond. I mean, not a pedal, a pebble. It's like dropping a pebble into a pond, and you see the ripple effects go out and go out and go out. And how far out do they go? They go far. They do, and everything it touches changes the dynamic a little bit.
It does. And I want to get your honest perspective on this, because it kind of goes into the point before of something, beautiful coming out of something that really is evil, with the response being good to evil acts. And because I do think about this a lot when I get this, because I see it quite frequently, especially when the anniversary rolls around, is people saying, I wish we could go back to September 12th, 2001. And they say that because on September 12th, you could not drive down your street. You could not look in any direction without seeing the United States flag flying on every single porch of every house, in front of every school, on every car window. And then also hearing the "We will never forget" saying, and also having that tattooed on a lot of bumper stickers. And maybe one of the most patriotic days in U.S. history, September 12th, 2001.
Yes.
And now, over 20 years later, though, and you obviously forever having the personal experience of 9/11 stitched into your life, have you seen any shifts or changes to the response to 9/11 in the country and remembering that day since 2012? Because I also take into account the amount of people that are now maybe don't have that personal response like you, or experience like you do, that are haven't been alive during that time.
Yes, I mean, obviously time softens the impact of what happened for many people, and many people haven't experienced it. What's troubling me a lot is that more and more now I'm seeing people making decisions that are related to money and greed. For example, this situation with the PGA and Live Golf. The Live Golf is a Saudi project, and they're basically buying by paying huge amounts of sums to professional
they're
golfers.
Buying everything they're trying to buy right now.
And the Saudis, there's so much evidence that the Saudis, members of the Saudi government, were complicit and involved in the attacks of 9/11. This is now evidence has been uncovered, and it's been documented that there were governmental people in contact with the terrorists that this happened. The Saudis have yet to acknowledge and be accountable to 9/11 families for this. And yet these these professional golfers, and the gentleman that was the remaining principal of Sandler O'Neill Wells's company, Jimmy Dunn, is the person that brokered this agreement between the PGA and Live Golf. He put this together. It's just horrible. And now on the other, and so these people are making millions and millions and millions of dollars, while 9/11 families are still trying to receive acknowledgement and accountability from the role that the Saudis played in 9/11. The other thing that's bugging me a lot is that we have had Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who's the mastermind of 9/11, and 4 of his co-conspirators at Gitmo since about 2004. There have been hearings, trials. Now, this group is trying to say, all right, let's do a plea deal. They've stalled and they've done all this kind of stuff to stall the wheels of justice. We want a plea deal. Let's take the death penalty off the table, and we will agree that we did everything we did, and we want to stay in Gitmo. We don't want to go to the U.S. and be in Supermax. Excuse me? Excuse me? You're the terrorists that planned this. Get on trial. Put them on trial. Let's hear what they have to say. Because I've also heard other rumors that what they will have to say is that they're angry at the Saudis because the Saudis put them up to this. And now the Saudis are, I've heard that report too. That's come from Moussaoui, who is another person involved who is in Supermax in the US. So, there's so much cover up that is going on with our governments.
Yeah.
So much cover up, and still has been so much cover up. That to me is extremely upsetting and frustrating.
What's the thing? It was about I think it was 20 people, part of 20 hijackers, and Zacarias Moussaoui was the guy that's in Supermax right now in Colorado, who's the only hijacker that is still alive. People don't realize that there is still one signed on hijacker that is still alive who's in Supermax right now, who was actually picked up on an immigration charge right before 9/11. So that's the only reason he wasn't actually on the plane. And he actually was the one who was that the plane he was supposed to be on was the one that ended up heading towards the White House, that either crashed, got shot down by the government, however you want to say it, and the government being proactive in that immigration charge, not allowing him to get on that plane. That means that plane had one less hijacker on that plane, and that happens to be the one that was the only one non-successful. So there is a ton of information with 9/11 that I don't think a lot of people really do understand, because we're just so consumed with what did happen that day. I'm like surprised too at the phone calls, the voicemails that were left from them on their family's phone. They sounded so calm. Hey, Mom, the flight's been hijacked. It's not looking good. I just want to let you know I love you. Like it really, like at the 9/11 museum, when you can hear some of these.
Yeah,
it's riveting, the calmness in their voice. Or I don't know if they're so calm because they're intentionally trying to not stress out their loved ones, or they just I don't know, but the human element of it really plays a heart-wrenching factor when you really try to put yourself in their shoes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'd love to get your thoughts too on really where can people find the Red Bandana Project and help out in any way, whether it's donations, volunteering, trying to teach about Wells Crowther and that day and those experiences. Where can people find you?
Well, we have our crowthertrust.org website. We have our Red Bandana Project.org website. And at some point, we're going to be putting a link to these new digital lessons on our Red Bandana Project website. that teachers will be able to download and use free of charge. The Volunteer and Service Learning Center, ultimately at Boston College, will be a good place to contact. Again, we're in the building phase of this and what it's going to look like over the next year, probably. But we're very excited about this relationship and how the Volunteer and Service Learning Center wants to take the reins, which is a wonderful thing. So people can look to those websites. Boston, they want to help financially, which would be great. We have a Venmo code I can send to you if that works. I don't know if it will, but Boston College has every year they have a Red Bandana run. This year it's going to be October 21st, and people can register online by going to bc.edu/Red Bandana Run. They can register online. I think it's $25 to register as a runner, and you don't have to run. You just register, and you can form teams. You can do a run locally at your, in your own time and space. But it's the fundraising part is when you register.
Okay.
Done when you register. So, and there's also a donate button on on the trust websites. So we invite you all to be part of our work and help us support.
Okay, awesome. Well, that sounds great, Ms. Crowther. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today and getting this message out, because it's so important, especially for people who really don't have any idea about the events of 9/11, like from a personal experience wise. I was in second grade myself, so it's not like I even myself know that destructive feeling of that day like the adults do, especially thinking, okay, well, we're probably going to be going to war soon. Who's going to be going to war? I mean, they're the events that took place after that. Really just trying to push out and resonate with people and make people feel like that did happen in our country. It can anything like that has the possibility of happening again if we don't continue to teach and get these messages and these stories out there, especially about your son. I mean, God bless. Americans like that are the reason we still have a country right now to begin with, because we have Wills Crowther in the World Trade Center. How many Americans enlisted and went right over to the Middle East to say, nope, this ain't happening again. It's only gonna, if anything happens, it's gonna be on your soil, and we're going over there to do it. So God bless them too, and thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you very much, Daniel, for your interest and your passion, and for inviting me on. It's wonderful that you're doing this kind of work. That's really, really, really excellent. So yeah. I appreciate this. So thank you for keeping this good work going and keeping people tuned in.
No, for sure. No, I'm sure we'll link up down the road.
Wonderful. Sounds great. All right. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Allison.